The men standing at Arvid Johansson's fence in November of 1890. 8 are not cruel men, they are practical men, and practical men in the Dakota Territory. No foolishness when they see it digging a hole in. The hillside Arvid is 41 years old Swedish. He came to Hanford Flats in 1891. With a trunk and 4 children, he brought a leather journal filled with notes in a cramped hand that no one in the settlement can read. Britta is dead now. A fever the second winter took her, found every gap in the cabin walls, and moved in. Oscar is 14, Major 11, Emil 7, Lena is 3, and has her mother's eyes, and their father is out in the November cold, digging a hole, not a root cellar, something else. Rueben Kraft leans on the fence post and cups his hands. You can't bury yourself to get warm. Arvid doesn't answer. His pickaxe rings against the half-frozen earth. A chunk rolls down the slope. Lars Pedersen shakes his head. A man buries seeds in spring, not himself in November. Brandt allows himself a grin. Will find him come March, frozen solid, sitting next to his carrots. The men drift back to their sensible lives. Firewood to stack, animals to shelter, reasonable things. Arvid watches them go. 3 silhouettes retreating into the gathering blue dusk. He puts the pickaxe into the frozen earth again. To understand what he is risking, you must understand what he has lost. Britta's doctor came twice from Bismarck and could do nothing. $4 to $7 to the store, 19 to the cooperative, 11 to the church fund. A debt that fills him with deep shame. His cattle are down to 3/2 of them sickly. Last summer's harvest was lean. Enough rain for hope, then nothing by his accounting. He has enough flour, salt, pork, and beans to last until the 14th of February. He cannot wait for spring. There is something else in that journal, carried from a province in Sweden called Dalarna. Arvid's grandfather was a man who thought deeply about the relationship between the earth and the heat. It holds. The old man pressed his bare palm flat against the January snow. 2 feet down there is life, he said. Feel. His grandfather said the earth remembers summer. It holds it down deep, it never fully forgets. Arvid Johansson has been waiting 12 years to build something around that memory. The hill faces southeast. He measured the angle with a compass and a string for the low winter sun, which means the low winter sun will strike whatever he builds at nearly the optimal angle. The hill is a mass of soil and stone, absorbing and storing the heat of 10,000 summers. Going into that hill is not going into cold ground, it is going into an insulated vault. He digs the main chamber first, 16 feet deep into the hill, 12 feet wide. The upper foot of soil is frozen hard as brick. His pickaxe bounces off with a bone-etching shock in the second week. He frames the entrance tunnel 11 feet, angling slightly downward. The angle is not accidental. Cold air is heavy. It flows in low pools like water. By making the tunnel slope downward, he creates a cold trap. The air cannot rise the cold pools at the base of the tunnel, and plugs itself a natural door. He frames the structure with salvaged boards from the cow shed. The August wind took granite and limestone pulled from 3 years of plowing, fitted together stone by stone. Green cottonwood logs from the creek bottom laid horizontal in the cordwood style. Bark still on. He mortars with a mixture of river clay and sawdust, experimenting through weeks of failure. And then there is the glass. Arvid spent 8 months collecting broken windows and bottles. Lars Pedersen stops by to look at the glass and stops being able to say anything clever. Every discarded scrap carefully gathered and pieced into a south-facing frame 11 feet wide. Clay-sealed linseed oil in the seams, crooked, lumpy, with a wedge he is not proud of. But light comes through, a soft, distorted glow, illuminating the dark dugout chamber on a clear November afternoon. Arvid lies on his back in the unfinished chamber and watches a yellow rectangle travel across the dirt floor. He times it with Britta's father's brass pocket watch, the one he has kept wound, because to let it stop feels like surrender. 38 minutes of winter sunlight, striking the dark earth, warming it by fractions of a degree, repeated daily, accumulating into the thermal mass of the soil below. Along the north wall, he builds his battery. 800 pounds of rounded granite and pale limestone stones, fitted into a mass 2 feet high and 3 feet deep, running the full width of the chamber. Every day sunlight warms the air, that air warms the stones. Every night the stones give it back. They absorb heat and gain. Release it in loss. They are a flywheel for temperature against the killing cold. He read about this in an imperfect translation of a French agricultural text, obtained from a Fargo professor after 4 Months European estates used south-facing stone walls to ripen peaches in England's cool summers. Arvid applies this principle. Underground, the raised beds run along the walls, dark creekbank soil mixed with manure, ash, and Aprils compost. The mixture smells alive, which is the only word for it. It is a scent of spring. In November, he plants cold-tolerant varieties, turnips, parsnips, kale, spinach, and winter. Lettuce. Garlic needs cold to trigger its growth. It will use the chamber's moderate chill to its advantage. A German homesteader once told him, "These survived 2 winters in the Rhineland, they will survive your territory in the warmest corner." 3. Tomato starts in a clay pot. He knows this is foolish. He plants them anyway. It is the 4th week of November, and Arvid has a problem. The structure is not finished. The weather has turned mean. The gray, persistent cold of pre-blizzard November that settles into your joints. His hands have cracked at the knuckles and bleed a little in the early mornings. Before they warm up, he has developed a cough. He is trying very hard not to think about, because he knows what it becomes. He has 4 children who need him to not think about it. Rueben Kraft stops by and watches Johansson. Winter's 2 weeks off, maybe less. You plan to finish this thing. I plan to finish it, Arvid says. And then what? Grow lettuce in January. Yes, the cold will get in no matter what you do. It gets in the same as anywhere. The cold will try, Arvid says. Rueben is quiet for a moment. I'll tell Reverend Bauer to say a prayer for you and those children. He means it with kindness. That is the worst part. He genuinely means it with kindness. That night, Arvid works until 2 in the morning, 4 hours sleep up. Before first light, Oskar comes out after his school lessons to carry spoil soil from the excavation to the cabin garden. Maja brings hot coffee at midday, watching her father with her mother's expression. Love, worry, and absolute refusal. Emil asks to help. Arvid sets him to gathering stones with a 7-year-old's total ceremonial commitment. The boy's boots are too small. He has been wearing them anyway, never telling his father of the pain. The chamber is sealed and planted by the first day of December, a sanctuary within the hill. One Tuesday in November, Arvid almost quits sitting on the spoil pile with his lantern between his boots. He has $2 4 to 7 in debt. Frame that won't seal. He is coughing every morning. He sits for 11 minutes by his pocket watch, counting them. So he does not stay longer than he should. Then he gets up, he grips the shovel and disappears back into the dark hole. The linseed oil and clay mixture finally gives Arvid what he wants. On the 21st attempt, he discovers the secret is warming the clay over the wood stove. First he presses it into a seam and smooths it with the back of a spoon. He tests a sample overnight. The cold compresses it further into the joint. He reseals every seam in 2 days. The cold blade disappears from the chamber. The insulated door, 2 panels of rough board with dried prairie grass compressed between them. He hangs it on leather hinges. No iron to spare, and it fits the tunnel entrance closely. A thing that works in this ground in this winter for these children. He fits the last limestone piece into the mass along the north wall, finishing the 800-pound battery. He sits back on his heels, pressing his palm flat against the stone. It is cold. A promise, not yet a delivery. He writes in the journal, the battery is complete in 6 weeks. If the sun cooperates, it will begin to matter. The next morning, he wakes to the first hard frost, 14 below, and goes out to check the chamber. He carries the thermometer borrowed from Oskar's teacher, a thing meant for classroom demonstration, lent with kind skepticism. He stands in the chamber for 10 minutes. 26 degrees Fahrenheit outside. It is 14 below. The chamber, with no fire, is 52 degrees warmer than the outside air. He writes this number in the journal and underlines it twice. He plants the garlic that day. On the 9th of December, Arvid sits alone in the finished chamber with a candle watch and thermometer. The candle is the only added heat source in the chamber. No fire, no stove, just physics, just the candle, the solar gain stored in the stone battery, and the earth itself. The thermometer reads 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Outside, it is a staggering 18 below zero. 49 degrees of difference from one candle, a glass wall, and 800 pounds of stone. He sits very still, breathes steam into the air, and thinks about his grandfather in Dalarna. He says into the silence, "Du hade rätt farfar, you were right, grandfather." He writes the date, the temperatures, and 3 pages of careful notes in his journal. He blows out the candle, walks to the cabin, and checks each child before sleeping. December passes. The plants grow with a slowness that would test a man's faith. The kale, particularly, which comes out of the soil, Like something deciding whether to commit to life by Christmas, there is enough spinach to cut for a meal, and Arvid serves it without ceremony ordinary, a winter in which vegetables are ordinary, that is. The goal Carl Brandt stops by on the Twentyskond, he stands in the chamber for 5 minutes, his expression careful, and recalibrated. It's warmer in here. Carl says 31 degrees this morning, Arvid. Replies outside was 14 below. Carl does the arithmetic. Can you really grow food? Come back. In 3 weeks, Arvid says the storm begins on the 6th of February. The morning is gray and still with pressured air. The horizon to the northwest is a perplegrity that has nothing to do with evening. Arvid spends the morning preparing firewood. Inside, water containers filled. Healthy cattle moved to the linto. He checks the chamber. 33 degrees. Watching the kale and spinach grow with stubbornness, he fits the insulated door of board and dried grass into the tunnel entrance and closes it tight. By noon, the wind finds its voice. By 2, it becomes a relentless white condition that erases the world. The temperature plunges 6 degrees, in an hour reaching 31 below zero by evening and still. Falling, Rueben Kraft burns through his firewood. By midnight, forced to break apart furniture for his family's warmth. His family huddles in the smallest room, the temperature inside dropping to terrifying 14 degrees. The house cries like something alive as the wooden joints contract in the lethal, encroaching cold. Lars Pedersen's livestock barn loses its roof to the wind during the early hours of February 7th. The wind carries the roof 40 yards east, leaving the animals exposed to the open, freezing sky. By morning, 3 of the cattle are dead. The temperature remains 41 below zero. Carl Brandt's house holds, but his pipes freeze solid at 2 in the morning, and his water barrels freeze into ice. Carl, his wife, and 5 children spend the second day of the blizzard melting snow on the stove to drink, working at it most of the day, running through firewood to boil water. They should have been able to pour. The storm does not stop on the 7th or 8th, running through a third day with mechanical indifference. On the second day, with temperatures holding at 43 below, the wind is a wall of white. The insulated door is being tested by the immense pressure differential the wind creates across the tunnel. The wind wants in. It finds the tunnel mouth under the drift. The leather hinges flex on the windward side. The temperature is 40 below on the chamber side. It is near 70 degrees of difference across 2 inches of board and dried grass. The cold trap is working precisely as he designed it. Heavy cold air pools at the tunnel base, forming a stagnant insulating plug. Lars's roof is gone. Ruben's furniture is fuel. Carl's family huddles in bed to share precious body heat as their home freezes 20 degrees inside Carl's home with a fire in Arvid's cabin. The temperature is 42 degrees. As children eat porridge, Arvid has not reached the chamber in 3 days. The tunnel entrance drifted shut on the first night of snow. He sees only a smooth white curve from the window. He does not know if the 5th blow cold killed everything. He won't know if his principles held until the storm ends. He waits in the silence of the whiteout. On the morning of the 10th, the wind stops suddenly, a total absence of sound that remakes the world in silence. Arvid dresses in every layer he owns, grabs his grain shovel, and steps out into the crystalline freezing air. The air is 52 below zero. His breath freezes instantly, and Britta's wool scarf stiffens with ice in minutes. He shovels for 11 minutes to clear the tunnel entrance. 4 feet of consolidated drift. He is breathing hard. He enters the tunnel, quickly moving toward the far end, where winter morning sun illuminates the chamber beyond. He walks down the slope, one hand on the earth wall, and pushes through the grass-insulated door. He looks at the thermometer, 34 degrees Fahrenheit, an 86-degree difference from the killing cold outside. The kale stands in its bed deep blue-green, untouched. The spinach has lost a few outer leaves, but the growing centers are upright and alive. Arvid pulls a parsnip from the dark soil the length of his forearm and holds it in both hands. Firm white cold, he sits down on the stone battery. Cold now spent, having given it stored heat through 3 days of storm, he puts his bare palm flat against it the way his grandfather did in Dalarna. Faint and deep, the last residual warmth. Carl Brandt comes that afternoon, moving through thigh-deep snow, standing outside the tunnel entrance with his hat in his hands. Humility pure and undefended. Can I look? Carl says. Arvid takes him inside. Carl stands at the thermometer, looks at the plants, and puts his hand on the stone battery. My pipes are frozen. 5 children who haven't had a proper meal in 3 Days he looks at the kale, can I bring my wife in to see bring your family Arvid, says Rueben Kraft, comes on the 11th he has aged in the storm. Cold and sleeplessness accomplishing in days what takes. A decade Ruben stands at the fence line, my furniture is ash, my family is all right. But my furniture is ash, I said things last fall I wouldn't say again. Ruben says I know that Arvid replies quietly. Can I see it? Arvid takes Ruben inside, the same reckoning follows at the thermometer. And stone Lars Pedersen comes on the 12th, he is barely holding together. 3 cattle dead his barn roof. Somewhere in a field Lars doesn't say anything clever, he stands in front of the kale for a long time in the warm, earthy light. Lars's voice is entirely different from the fence in November. Will you teach me, he asks. Yes, Arvid says, next summer you build, I'll show you everything I know. Arvid harvests 60 pounds of vegetables from the chamber in the weeks following the massive blizzard. He distributes them, some traded for flour, some pressed into hands to preserve everyone's dignity. Parsnips to the Kraft children, who show the pale pallor of a diet running out of variety. Kale to the Brandts, who express gratitude by repairing the tunnel's drift damage. Without being asked, in spring 4 families come to Arvid before they break ground. They want to build, they stand in his yard with notebooks, those who have notebooks, and they listen. He speaks of site selection, southeast orientation, the glass, and the cold trap tunnel. He explains the stone battery, and how to calculate its mass. He realizes he is speaking like his grandfather, not displaying knowledge, but handing it forward, a chain of understanding going back further than he can trace. Brandt has brought a notebook and a sharp pencil, writing everything with the intense attention of a man who will not be caught unprepared again. Lars Pedersen listens, with his whole body, remembering 3 dead cattle and a roof found 40 yards from his barn. Rueben Kraft stands at the back with his arms crossed, listening as hard as any of them, his skepticism gone. Arvid explains the cold trap 3 times until he sees the principle has landed. Physics not a trick, you don't fight the cold's weight, you let its weight work for you. That summer Arvid rewrites the leather journal, not in Swedish anymore, in plain English with functional drawings. He writes the cold trap section 3 times before it is clear, the stone battery section twice each time. He asks himself, could a man standing in a field understand this by August? Lars Pedersen has broken ground on his own chamber, southeast facing, measuring the angle with a compass and string. Brandt is gathering glass, methodically visiting abandoned homesteads with a wagon and a careful, practiced hand. Rueben Kraft has mortared 2 courses of his stone battery, leaving it to cure under the warm summer sun. The knowledge is moving. Arvid's grandfather was not just teaching a technique, but the practice of paying attention, finding principles underneath surface behavior, and building structures around those truths, rather than around habit. A man who builds around habit will always be surprised. A man who builds around principles finds they hold. In August, he is in the chamber, empty now, the stone mass warm with accumulated summer heat. Lena finds him there at 4 years old. She has learned to navigate the tunnel without fear. She comes through the inner door and climbs up onto the stone bench beside him. What are you writing? She asks. Everything I know, Arvid says, his voice steady. She considers this. Is it a lot? He looks at the journal, then at the chamber. He looks at the glass face, catching August light, the empty beds resting in dark soil. The stone battery is warm under his hand. Some things, he says, things worth knowing. Lena leans against his arm. After a moment, she says, it's warm in here. Yes, he says it is. She watches the light move across the floor. She accepts the warmth with the completeness that children have before they complicate simple things. That is the thing about principles that are true. They do not require your belief. They work whether you understand them or not, whether neighbors are watching or have gone back to their lives. The earth holds what summer gives it, the stone gives back what the air deposits. These things were true before Arvid dug his first shovelful. They will be true long after Rueben Kraft burns his furniture and calls it a hard winter. Arvid Johansson plants garlic in November and calls it a plan. The difference is not luck, not talent, not even hard work that splits knuckles and stiffens scarves with frozen breath. The difference is one conversation. Feel this. His grandfather said the earth remembers. Build something that remembers with it.